The wind howled through the streets of Charleston as Eleanor Vance stood at the top step of her late husband's family estate. Vance Manor loomed like a cathedral of secrets, its wrought iron gate creaking open on its own, as if the house had been waiting. Eleanor hadn't been back in 15 years, not since Thomas's funeral. She had moved to Asheville, cut off from his family, and buried herself in quiet grief. But now a letter had arrived with no return address, written in a familiar hand. Her own name, elegant cursive, the kind Thomas used before the stroke that took his voice. Inside. One line. Come back. It's time. The handwriting chilled her. Thomas had been dead nearly 2 decades. The door opened before she could knock. A tall man stood there, mid-30s, olive coat, dark eyes sharp behind round spectacles. Mrs. Vance? Yes. I'm Nathan Gray, legal executor of your husband's estate. I've been instructed to deliver his final bequest. Inside, please. Eleanor hesitated only a moment, then stepped in. The air was thick with lemon oil, dust, and age. The parlor hadn't changed. Velvet drapes drawn tight. Mahogany shelves heavy with law books. Above the fireplace, the Vance crest. A silver eye. Split in half. Nathan handed her a box. Polished oak. Cold. What is this? Instructions. And a game. Eleanor frowned. A game? Nathan nodded once. Your husband left a series of challenges. Solving them will reveal the inheritance. If you complete it, Eleanor narrowed her eyes. What happens if I refuse? Nathan's smile was hollow. Then the house passes to someone else. Someone already waiting. He handed her a sealed envelope and stepped back. You should begin before midnight. The house responds better then. Responds? But he was already gone. Eleanor stood alone in the parlor, the box in her hand. She opened the letter. Dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm long dead. But not gone. Not yet. I left things unfinished, things. I never told you. Secrets in the walls, in the bloodline. But you always were the sharpest. If anyone can find the truth, it's you. This isn't just a puzzle, it's a choice. And I need you to choose the truth. Your first clue lies where your heart once shattered. Love, always. Thomas. Eleanor's fingers trembled. She knew where to go. The nursery, where their daughter died. She walked slowly down the hallway. The wallpaper seemed darker, like it had absorbed years of grief and silence. When she opened the door to the nursery, the air hit her like a wave, musty, cold, and heavy with memory. Nothing had changed. The rocking chair sat in the corner, unmoved. The cradle, long empty, faced the window as it always had. Dust danced in the moonlight. She stepped forward and the floorboard groaned under her weight. She bent down, brushing aside the old rug. One of the boards was slightly loose. Eleanor pried it open. Beneath it was a tin box. Inside, a photograph. A chess piece, the white queen, and another note. The queen protects, but the king falls. The next clue lies where shadows pray and angels cry. Eleanor clutched the chess piece in her hand. The church. The old family chapel was on the edge of the estate, abandoned for decades. She lit a lantern and stepped back into the hall, heart hammering. The game had begun. The old chapel was only a few hundred yards from the main house, but to Eleanor, the walk felt like a passage through another lifetime. The sky was graying, stars blotted by thick southern mist. Her lantern cast a shaky halo across the worn cobblestone path as ivy tugged at her boots. The chapel had once been beautiful brick walls with white accents, a rose window of stained glass above the door. Now the stained glass was cracked, shards missing like broken teeth. The door hung half off its hinges. She pushed it open. The creak echoed like a cry. Inside, pews lay scattered as if from some long-ago panic. Hymnals rotted where they'd fallen. The altar was still intact, though scorched black on one side. A faint scent of ash lingered beneath the must. Eleanor swept her lantern over the front rows. On the pulpit sat something new, a chessboard. Marble. Untouched by time, she approached, eyes narrowing. The board was already mid-game, with several pieces arranged in a stalemate. A white queen sat beside it, not on the board, but set apart, waiting. A note lay beneath it. The queen never moved. She watched. She remembered. Now so must you. The moment Eleanor lifted the queen, a deep chime sounded from somewhere beneath the chapel. Her lantern flickered. The board trembled. A section of the stone floor shifted. A square of tile lifted, revealing a staircase. Eleanor's breath caught. She descended slowly, the air growing colder. The stairs ended in a crypt. Stone walls. Sarcophagi lining the sides. But what drew her eye was the far end of the chamber, a mural. Painted in blood and soot. A woman in white, crowned, holding a mirror. Eleanor stepped closer. A plaque lay beneath it. The first Vance widow who chose silence. A second plaque rested below that, dusty but legible. The last widow must choose again. Eleanor stared. Then she noticed the indentation in the mural's center, shaped like a chess piece. She fit the queen into it. The mural clicked, and a hidden drawer opened beneath the sarcophagus. Inside, a sealed envelope and a key. The letter was signed in Thomas's hand. Ellie, this part was never meant to reach you unless I failed. If you're reading this, then someone is trying to finish what I interrupted. There's a room in the West Wing. Your father-in-law bricked it shut in 1964. Use the key. Do not go alone. Do not trust the mirrors. She felt cold crawl over her skin. Suddenly, behind her footsteps, she spun. But the crypt was empty. Only the shadows watched. She backed away slowly, clutching the letter and key. Her lantern now sputtered as if breathless, the flame bending unnaturally toward the mural. For a moment, Eleanor thought she saw the queen in the painting blink. Heart hammering, she turned and hurried up the stairs, pushing the tile back in place as best she could. Once above ground, the air felt thinner. The night was silent, too silent. As she walked back to the house, she saw light in one of the West Wing windows, but no one should have been there. That section had been sealed since Thomas's father died. Inside the house, the hallway to the West Wing had always been blocked by an old grandfather clock too large to move without tools. But now, the clock had been slid aside. Eleanor gripped the key. The walls in the corridor were lined with old paintings, portraits of long-dead Vance matriarchs, all with similar eyes, all with silver pendants. The carpet muffled her steps as she reached a brick wall at the end of the corridor. She pressed the key to a metal square embedded in the brickwork. It clicked. A mechanism shifted. Part of the wall retracted, and the room beyond exhaled. Dust. Silence. Secrets. Inside, it was a study books piled haphazardly. An old phonograph. A writing desk littered with parchment. A mirror leaned against the wall, covered in a black cloth. A second note lay on the desk. You found the queen's chamber. Good. But the king was never loyal. And the pawns have teeth. Below the note sat a photograph. Hair daughter. Alive, but older than she had ever lived to be. Eleanor's blood froze. The game wasn't just a puzzle. It was a rewriting. Eleanor couldn't breathe. The photograph of her daughter, older perhaps, 17, stared up from the desk as if time had forgotten to tell her she was dead. Her name, Lila, was scrawled on the back in Thomas's unmistakable script, followed by a date. October 1985, but Lila had died in 1972. Just 2 years old. A sickness, they said. A fever that consumed her in 3 days. Eleanor clutched the photo and fell into the cracked leather chair. Her knees had buckled, and her heart now pounded with the heavy, insistent thud of dread. The key, the letters, the hidden chamber sit all had an air of madness to it. But this? This tore through the fabric of memory itself. She turned her attention back to the room. Books covered in dust lined the shelves, some without titles. She grabbed one and blew across the cover. The particles shimmered in the moonlight that filtered through a high arched window. Inside the book, anatomical sketches, cryptic marginalia in Latin, pages that had been sewn together. She pulled open a drawer from the writing desk. Another letter lay waiting. This one was dated only a month before Thomas's death. If you found the photograph, then you know. Lila was taken, not lost. My father arranged it. He believed the Vance bloodline needed protection from something old. Something bound to the women. I tried to stop him, but by the time I learned the truth, it was done. They didn't kill her. They erased her. Everything in this house is tied to that act. Eleanor felt as if the floor had fallen beneath her. Erased. The photograph, the Queen's chamber. The notes all pointed toward a single truth she'd buried beneath years of grief. Her daughter might still be alive. And if so, someone had kept her hidden for more than 20 years. She stood abruptly. Her hand brushed the mirror draped in black cloth. "Do not trust the mirrors," Thomas had said. But what did he mean? The cloth shifted slightly with her touch. A breeze, perhaps, or the subtle stir of her own breath. But it moved. And when she reached to lift it, a whisper filled the room. "Ellie." She froze. The voice had come from behind her, but the room was empty. She turned slowly, every inch of her body tense. Nothing. She backed away from the mirror. Instead, she focused on the next step. There had to be another clue. Another piece of this twisted puzzle. She examined the shelves, searching for patterns. A series of books with spines marked only by Symbolsa crown, a chalice, a serpent. On instinct, she pressed the crown. A section of the bookshelf receded. A small compartment slid open. Inside, a map of the estate. But it was different. There were corridors she'd never seen before. Underground chambers. Rooms labeled with strange titles. The echoing stair. The hollow nursery. The vault of crows. One chamber had been circled in red ink. The third reflection. That was her next destination. She memorized the path. Through the library. Behind the grandfather portrait. Down the servants' passage that had been sealed since the 30s. Back through the hall, the mirror stood silently, the cloth now slipping halfway down the frame. A flicker moved inside it. A ripple, like breath on water. She left the Queen's chamber quickly, map in hand. The house had gone quiet. No more moans from old wood, no sighs in the walls. As if it too was waiting. The library was colder than she remembered. Her breath misted in the air. The portrait of Thomas's grandfather hung with a cracked frame. She pushed it aside. A narrow hallway revealed itself. Cramped and dark. The wallpaper here was damp, peeling in long curls. At the far end, a rusted metal door. She opened it. The servant's stair spiraled downward. Each step moaned in protest. A single, flickering bulb illuminated the descent. At the bottom, the hallway widened. Stone walls. A smell of mildew and old smoke. The map showed a turn here. Right. Then left. Then, a door of black wood. Above it, a plaque. The third reflection. Eleanor's hand shook as she turned the knob. Inside, the room was lit by candlelight. And in the center, 3 mirrors, each standing independently, all identical, gold-trimmed, elegant, imposing. A note sat on a small table before them. One shows what you were. One shows what you became. One shows what was taken. But only one leads forward. A test. Eleanor stared into the first mirror. She saw herself, younger. Before Thomas. Before grief. Smiling. The second showed her now. Hollowed. Hardened. The third, her daughter. Alive. In a place she didn't recognize. The image wavered and then vanished. Eleanor stepped toward the third mirror. It pulsed, and then it opened. Not physically. But something inside her shifted. A wind burst from the glass, knocking over the candle. And then she wasn't in the chamber anymore. She was somewhere else. A hallway, clean. White walls, fluorescent lights. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Then a voice. Subject 12 is responding again. Another voice. She remembers. Eleanor turned. Men in lab coats. Glass panes. Behind them children. Silent. Watching. One of them. Lila. Older, pale. Their eyes met. "Mom?" the girl whispered. But the moment shattered. The vision vanished. Eleanor staggered backward. The mirror had thrown her out. She was back in the stone chamber. The mirror cracked down the center. But she had seen enough. Lila was alive, and someone had locked her in a place far worse than death. The game had changed. Now it wasn't about inheritance. It was about rescue. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. The cracked mirror from the third reflection chamber had left a wound in her memory, pulsing like an open sore. Lila's voice older, but unmistakable echoed in her skull like the remnants of a dream she hadn't meant to wake from. She stayed up pacing, rereading every note and letter Thomas had left behind. One reference buried in a rambling paragraph stood out. "The vault holds the remains of their failures. If you find it, don't linger. But do not leave empty-handed." The Vault of Crows. It had been on the map. West of the estate's foundation. Beneath the garden maze. By dawn, Eleanor had packed a satchel. Gloves, matches, flashlight, Thomas's keys, and the strange queen chess piece she'd pocketed earlier. As she stepped outside, the morning was cloaked in fog thick enough to taste. The estate loomed behind her like a sleeping creature. The hedge maze had once been trimmed to perfection, a popular wedding day backdrop. Now, vines devoured its edges, and the once polished gravel paths crunched under her boots like bones. At the heart of the maze lay a statue, a hooded woman with wings made of thorns. Beneath her feet, another plaque. "Those who return must not forget. Those who forget do not return." Eleanor found the concealed hatch behind the Bayesian iron handle hidden under a cluster of dead roses. She heaved it open. The scent that rose from the darkness was rot and salt and rusted iron. She descended. The vault was colder than the other chamber sweater, too. Water dripped from moss-covered stone. Her flashlight flicked on. The hallway stretched impossibly long, like something from a dream. Doors lined the corridor reach marked with symbols. Some were cracked open. Inside, bones. Some human, others not. Eleanor's breath came faster. She knew instinctively that this was not a place made for the living. At the end of the hallway, an archway bore the words, "The Cage of Names." She stepped through. A chamber of shelves. Thousands of glass jars, each containing something. Hair. Teeth. Fingernails. Tags labeled with names and dates. She moved down the aisles, her flashlight flicking across names that had long since been removed from memory. Then she saw it. Har labeled. Lila Vance. Subject those. Inside, a single silver pendant. Her daughter's. She picked it up, hands trembling. A slip of paper was taped to the lid. Active. Transfer suspended. Relocation pending. Relocation. Eleanor whispered. Someone had planned to move her. But where? She turned and stopped. A man stood at the end of the aisle. Tall. Pale. Wearing a Vance family crest on his lapel. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice smooth as glass. Eleanor stepped back. "Who are you?" He smiled. "A watcher. We keep what others forget." "You're lying." He tilted his head. "You think love gives you the right to disturb what's been preserved?" Eleanor tightened her grip on the jar. "She's alive. I saw her. She was meant to be forgotten." With that, he stepped forward. Eleanor turned and ran. The vault twisted around her doorways that hadn't been there before, lights flickering like strobe flashes. She ducked into a side chamber and slammed the door shut. Her flashlight blinked out. Total darkness. Then a click. A lantern flickered to life behind her. Thomas. His eyes wide, his mouth moving soundlessly. It wasn't real. She knew that. But still, the sight of him undid her. He pointed at a panel in the wall. She approached and saw it. A grid of symbols. Crown, queen, serpent, mirror. She pressed the queen. The door swung open again, this time not into the vault, but into another corridor. This one lined with red thread across the walls, crisscrossing like veins. At the end, a steel door with biometric sensors. Above it, Facility 12. The truth was buried deeper than she thought. Eleanor stepped forward into the red light. The red light pulsed, bathing Eleanor's face in a bloody hue as she stared at the biometric scanner. Retina or fingerprint? She murmured, studying the panel. The reader buzzed softly, scanning the air. A voice crackled from the intercom above. Identity not verified. Access denied. Eleanor hesitated. Then she pulled out Thomas's old keyring. One of the brass keys bore an inscription. EDV, her husband's initials. A slot beneath the scanner blinked to life. She slid the key in. Click. The steel door hissed open. Cold air poured out. Beyond it lay a hallway of smooth metal, sterile and humming with unseen machinery. The sound of electricity buzzed like cicadas in the walls. The red thread from the vault was gone. In its place were glass panels lining the wall slabs, offices, and rooms she couldn't immediately identify. She moved slowly, her footsteps muffled against the polished concrete. To her left, one room housed rows of beds empty, but recently disturbed. The sheets were wrinkled, monitors still blinking green. On the walls were hand-drawn images, children's art. Suns, trees, a girl with braids. Her heart clenched. A door opened ahead. Eleanor ducked into a side corridor. Voices. Two men. Clipped accents. They passed without seeing her. Discussing clearing the West Wing before morning. She waited, then slipped back into the hallway and continued. Room 47. That was the room number Thomas had circled in his notes. She found it at the corridor's end. A keypad barred the way. This time, there was no key slot. No scanner. Just a single button. She pressed it. The door opened into darkness. She entered. The lights flickered on one by one. At the center, a chair. Medical restraints. A screen above it. Beside it, a cabinet marked Subject Files. Eleanor rushed to it. Drawer 12. She yanked it open. Inside, photos. Test results. Observational notes. Subject 12. Lila Vance. She scanned the documents. Patient exhibits above average cognitive function. Memory access inconsistent but improving. Responds negatively to maternal triggers. Subject believes mother is alive. Eleanor's knees weakened. Mother is alive. She turned to the screen. It blinked on. A live feed. A girl woman now sat in a garden enclosed by glass. She wore a hospital gown. Her hands were pressed to the window. Her mouth moved soundlessly. Eleanor stepped closer. Lila, she whispered. The woman in the feed blinked and turned. Her eyes locked on the camera. She mouthed something. Mom. The feed went dark. A voice sounded behind her. You weren't supposed to find this. Eleanor spun. The watcher stood in the doorway. This time he wasn't alone. Two others flanked him. You erased her, Eleanor said, voice shaking. You kept her locked away like some experiment. She is not your daughter anymore, he said coldly. She's part of something larger. I'm taking her back. You won't leave this facility. A flicker of motion behind the watchers. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Gregory the gardener. The one who never spoke. Who always looked at her too long. He raised a gun. Step away, he said. The watchers turned. Gregory fired. One went down. The others lunged for cover. Eleanor ran. Gregory grabbed her wrist. This way. They sprinted down the corridor. You worked for them? She gasped. Used to. Before Thomas recruited me. Before I learned the truth. They burst into a stairwell. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. She's in the upper wing, Gregory shouted. Isolation room A. They reached the second floor. Chaos erupted, guards running. Doors locking. Systems shutting down. Gregory pulled a card from his jacket and slammed it against the reader. The door opened. Inside, glass walls. And Lila. Eleanor stopped. Lila turned. And for the first time in 23 years, mother and daughter looked into each other's eyes. Eleanor stepped forward. It's me. Lila pressed a hand to the glass. Mom? Gregory ran to the control panel. I can override it, but we only have minutes. Eleanor didn't look away. Come home, she whispered. The glass wall hissed, opened. Lila ran into her arms. Eleanor held her as tightly as she had the day she was born. But then, gunfire. Gregory grunted. Fell. The watcher entered, wounded, bleeding, furious. You can't undo what was done. He spat. No, Eleanor said. But I can finish it. She raised Gregory's gun. Fired. Silence. She turned to Lila. Let's go home. The night air outside Facility 12 was colder than Eleanor remembered. Sirens wailed behind them. Smoke coiled upward as fires bloomed inside the compound. Eleanor half-dragged, half-carried Lila through the surrounding woods, following Gregory's escape path. Blood soaked Eleanor's sleeve, Gregory's blood. He'd stayed behind, wounded but determined to delay the remaining watchers. We need to keep moving, Eleanor whispered. Lila nodded, silent. Her body trembled from exhaustion, but her steps kept pace. Somewhere inside her, strength remained. They reached the edge of a clearing where a car waited, one Thomas had hidden years ago. Eleanor used the key fob. The trunk clicked open. Climb in, she said. Lila hesitated, staring at the sky. Are we really free? Eleanor met her eyes. For now. They drove through the night. Eleanor took back roads, ducking cameras and tollways. She knew the watchers wouldn't give up. But for now they had the advantage. Secrecy. They reached the old family cabin by Mornina crumbling retreat hidden in the Adirondacks, left behind by Eleanor's grandfather. Inside, dust danced in the sunlight. Mice scattered. But the foundation was strong. For days they stayed hidden. Eleanor made Lila tea. Told her stories. Filled in 23 years of life. Birthdays missed. Songs unsung. Books left unopened. And Lila slowly opened up. She remembered parts of the experiments. Most days, she said softly, they kept us drugged. The other subjects, they couldn't remember who they were. One girl forgot her own name every morning. She'd cry, thinking she was born that day. Eleanor swallowed hard. What did they want? To separate the soul from the self. They said emotions made memory impure. They were trying to isolate consciousness to find the clean mind. Eleanor blinked. For what? They never said. But they feared something. They called it the recollection. A wind howled outside. They said it would rise if too many of us remembered. Lila trembled. They kept whispering. The mirror must never break. Eleanor froze. The mirror? In the attic? Lila nodded. It's not just a mirror, it's a gateway. They used it to erase us, to lock away parts of ourselves. Eleanor stood. She went to her satchel, removed the chess piece. The queen. Thomas had hidden it for a reason. Back at the estate it had pulsed with warmth. She held it out to Lila. Her daughter stared, then touched it. The room shimmered. The cabin flickered like a signal breaking. Lila gasped. I remember more, she said. There's a map inside the mirror. A route back to what we lost. Back to who you were? Eleanor asked. Number to who we all were. That night, Eleanor dreamt of Thomas. He stood by the estate window, watching the stars blink out. They'll come, he said. but the truth is already inside her. That's what they fear. She woke with a gasp. Lila was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing. A complex map had taken form: spirals, corridors, fragments of language. "We have to go back," she said. "To the estate?" Lila nodded. "To the mirror. I have to finish what they started." Eleanor gripped her hand. "We go together." Ida. They returned at dusk. The estate was quiet, overgrown, empty. Inside, the air felt wrong thick with pressure. The attic stairs groaned as they climbed. The mirror waited. Lila placed the queen on the frame. The glass rippled, then broke, not shattered but unfolded, like paper peeled back to reveal light. Inside, a corridor, familiar yet endless. They stepped through. Light swallowed them. Memories surged: Lila's childhood, Eleanor's grief, Thomas's hands in hers. Echoes of a world where love wasn't broken into compartments. At the corridor's end, a chamber of mirrors. Each held a version of them. Young, old, broken, whole. One mirror cracked as they passed. Another melted. In the center, a pedestal. Upon it, a letter. Eleanor opened it. Underscore. To the woman who never stopped searching. What you hold is not a weapon, nor a key, but a bridge. The queen piece opens the truth, but only when you are ready to carry it. You must choose. Restore what was lost or forget, and live in peace. There is no going back. Underscore. Eleanor looked at Lila. Her daughter nodded. "I remember who I am," she said. "And I want to be whole." Eleanor placed the queen on the pedestal, the world inverted, colors unraveled. Light poured inward. And when it was done, they stood in the estate once more. But not as before. The house was clean, lit. Laughter echoed from rooms that hadn't known joy in decades. Photos reappeared on the walls. Thomas's journal rested on the desk, and in the mirror's place, a window, looking out onto a garden where roses bloomed. Lila turned. "You chose the bridge." Eleanor smiled. "I chose you." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, and for the first time in 23 years, they were home,